Pilot Jim thought the engine was running fine, but looking back, the emergency didn't begin after takeoff. It began during the run-up. It was a cool morning at sea level. Density altitude wasn't a factor, and the weather was perfect for flying. Jim taxied to the run-up area in his Piper Archer and began his normal before-takeoff checks. Everything appeared routine. Oil pressure was good. Engine temperatures were in the green. The magneto check was next. Jim smoothly advanced the throttle to obtain the recommended 2,100 revolutions per minute. But something was different. Instead of stopping at its usual position, he had to continue pushing the throttle farther and farther, until it was almost fully forward before the engine finally reached 2,100 revolutions per minute. The magneto drop itself was normal. Nothing sounded rough. The engine seemed smooth. Jim paused for a second. That's strange, he thought. Then he convinced himself it probably wasn't anything important. Maybe he had just remembered the throttle position wrong. After all, the engine sounded fine. So he finished the checklist and called the tower. Tower, Archer 562 Charlie Mike, ready for departure. A few moments later, cleared for takeoff. Jim advanced the throttle fully and began accelerating down the runway. Almost immediately, something felt wrong. The airplane wasn't accelerating with its normal urgency. The airspeed was increasing, but slowly. Still, Jim continued the takeoff. As the runway disappeared beneath him, another warning appeared. The airplane finally lifted off. Nearly 2/3 of the way down the runway, now Jim knew something was seriously wrong. Instead of climbing at the normal 600 feet per minute, the vertical speed indicator struggled to show 200 feet per minute. The airplane was climbing, but barely. This is where many accidents happen. Pilots become startled, they overreact, or they attempt steep turns back toward the runway without enough altitude. Jim did neither. He stayed calm. He immediately transmitted. Tower, Archer 2 Charlie Mike has a partial power emergency. The controller responded instantly. 2 Charlie Mike, runway is yours. All traffic will hold. Jim resisted the temptation to turn early. Instead, he continued straight ahead, carefully nursing every foot of altitude he could get. At approximately 600 feet above the ground, he made a very shallow bank into the crosswind. No steep turns, no rushing, just smooth, coordinated flying. Because the engine could quit completely at any moment, Jim kept the entire traffic pattern much tighter than normal. Instead of flying a standard 1,000-foot traffic pattern, he stayed around 600 feet, always close enough to glide to the runway if the engine failed completely. He avoided unnecessary maneuvering. He kept the runway within easy reach. When he turned base, he stayed close. Turning final, he resisted adding extra power. He was already planning for a power-off landing if necessary. Fortunately, the engine continued producing just enough power. Moments later, the Piper Archer rolled safely onto the runway. As Jim shut down the airplane, he replayed the flight in his mind. The long takeoff roll wasn't the first warning. The poor climb rate wasn't the first warning. The first warning had happened before he ever left the ground. It was the throttle position during the run-up. He knew exactly where the throttle normally sat to produce 2,100 revolutions per minute. That day, it required almost full throttle. The engine had been trying to tell him something. He simply ignored it. Lessons learned. Know your airplane's normal performance, not just the numbers, but how the airplane feels. Know where the throttle normally sits during run-up. Know how quickly the airplane normally accelerates. Know approximately where it normally lifts off. If you suddenly need much more throttle to achieve normal run-up RPM, stop. Something has changed. And if your airplane is using far more runway than normal to become airborne, reject the takeoff while runway remains. The safest emergency is the one that never leaves the ground. Want exclusive emergency pilot tips and life-saving strategies you won't find on YouTube or anywhere else? Just on our exclusive portal. Sign up for notification and free access. Link in comments. Also, please subscribe to our channel for more life-saving tips.